All right, welcome everybody to the start of our Karate Kid week here at SPF Entertainment. Tonight we are excited and honored to be joined by karate's bad boy himself, Sean Kanan, aka Mike Barnes, from the Karate Kid 3. And thanks so much for joining us tonight, Sean.
Oh, thank you, Patrick. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, I'm Shelby, but my middle name's Patrick, so it's all good.
Sure, I'm Patrick, but hey, it's all the
Things are
same.
confusing, so we're all the same. It's all good.
Should we start again?
No, there's no need to
Keep
start.
going? Okay.
All
All right,
good.
good. Okay.
So what's been going on, Sean? What projects are you involved with lately that you're allowed to divulge?
You know, you would think that with the pandemic and everything, and the fact that the majority of the entertainment business has been shut down, that I wouldn't be that busy. And as luck would have it, it's actually been a really busy couple months for me. I have a show that's on Amazon Prime. It's a show that I created called Studio City. And we just finished, about a month ago, we finished filming another 5 episodes of that in Los Angeles. They're now available on Amazon Prime. And I am now promoting my new soon-to-be released book, Way of the Cobra. So life has actually been pretty hectic, and I'm waiting to see if I leave next month to go start a film. So
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems to be really a lot of the folks we've talked to the past year that we've been able to get a hold of is, even though we've been travel restricted, a lot of you can still get a lot of pre-production done, if not maybe more, because you're forced to sit and work on stuff. So it's been a nice way to catch up on projects and get stuff started.
Yeah, I think the key really is this, that you gotta figure out a way not just to survive this, but to thrive during this. Because at a certain point, I mean, how much TV can you binge watch and how many bottles of wine can you drink before you're like, I gotta do something. It's fine if this was like something that was only for like 2 or 3 weeks, but this has been so protracted that life has to go on, albeit in sort of a very different framework for everybody professionally. And so, my wife is my creative partner. We just made the conscious decision that we were going to get these new episodes filmed come hell or high water. And, our actors, to their credit, were really giving and willing to do this. We had to follow a lot of very strict protocols because of COVID. Crazy and expensive, but we got it done. And I think everybody was really kind of happy to act again. It's like, when you're not able to do what you really love doing, it feels really restrictive. And you could see that everybody on the set was like, wow, I get to play. And as hectic as it was, and as many obstacles and challenges as there were from the production standpoint, on a gut level, the actors really just had a good time, because we really appreciated being able to do something that haven't been able to do so much.
Yeah, it's been weird, but it's been productive in its own right. So I really hope that once we return to some level of normalcy, we get to retain some of this ability, especially for those of us that have day jobs that aren't Hollywood. Being able to work remotely has been a huge boon, because it really just frees up so much time you're not wasting in an office. I'm an IT guy by day. And right. I mean, a lot of my time is dead time. I mean, I'm like a firefighter. I'm only there when there's an emergency.
An emergency, and then you got to action.
So there's days of fires and there's days of nothing. So, it's nice when I get to spend the majority of my week at home, unless I answer emails and phone calls, but I'm able to work on the side projects that I really enjoy doing. And so it's been nice.
Just curious. I'm not trying to go off on a tangent here, but I'm just curious. Do you have to physically be there when you're doing a lot of these repairs, or can you?
No, not usually. There's stuff. It's just like a help desk thing. There's break fix. You do how do I reset my password? But and people drop off like physical broken computers. I'll just go into the office 1 or 2 days a week, and I'll just tell them, just leave them in a pile outside. No, it's like a mechanics. The auto shop, just drop them off.
The simple fixes, ID10T problems. You know what that is?
Yeah.
It was idiot.
Yeah.
Just I was like, it sounds really serious.
And it's nice because when you're working in your office, you get a lot of people just drop by, and they bring a lot of problems that weren't really problems. So when you're not there, you really get to focus on the big issues. So it's been nice because then I can do the stuff I really want to do on the side, like run an entertainment company. So yeah, and talk to great folks like yourself. So I guess we'll before we really get into the Cobra Kai stuff, we wanted to just you've acted a lot in like soap operas and General Hospital, The Bold and the Beautiful. Like what was the main difference in being a soap opera actor versus like a film or a live theater performance? Because that's a very different performance, at least for a viewer to take in.
For me, being an actor is being an actor. It's the medium that changes. I don't consider myself a soap opera actor, but I've worked a lot in soap operas. I've also done 20 films, and so it's the medium that's different. And the best way that I could give you in a nutshell, soap operas are basically the McDonald's of acting. And I'm not saying that in a derogatory way, but you're making one show a day plus parts of other shows because you have to bank them. Because generally soap operas go on hiatus for a month in the summer, a month during Christmas and New Year's, but you need to have shows for all that time. So you're moving at a breakneck speed, and you're usually doing, we call them items instead of scenes, but you're doing like maybe 50, 60 items a day. Now you're not going to be in those, but you're cranking it out, and you just don't have the luxury of having multiple takes to necessarily get the absolute best work. I mean, from an acting standpoint, your best chance of doing your best work is usually being in a play, because you get 6-7 weeks of rehearsal, and you really are just digging into the material and knowing it. The next best thing is a film, because a film, you're really only doing 7 to 10 pages a day. So, they're shooting it from multiple angles. You get a lot of different takes, which when they're in the editing room gives them the best opportunity to give you the strongest performance. Television moves much more quickly. Nighttime television, not as much as soap operas. Soap operas move it's like beer through a Shriner. I mean, it's you need to, hit your mark, know your lines, and it's moving on. So for me, I think it's really a luxury when I get to do a film or a play to have, that rehearsal period and know that I'm going to get multiple takes and be able to, play with it a little bit rather than just like do it and move on.
Yeah, I feel like you get to own a role more when you get to live in it for longer than 15 minutes.
You do get to own it when you're in a soap opera, because you're playing a character for a long period of time. I mean, Deacon Sharp, I played that character starting in 2001 through 2016 off and on. So it's not so much as not being able to own a character. It's just more, with a soap opera, it's very expository. In other words, there's not a lot of action in the soap opera. It's talky. And so you're kind of saying the same thing over and over again for a couple of weeks in a storyline. If somebody didn't tune in Friday, they got to figure out what's going on Monday. So you reiterate a lot of the same stuff, which as an actor is really, it's difficult because it gets monotonous. And then the challenge is not to sink into the boredom of that, but to constantly challenge yourself to find new ways to basically make the same stuff sound fresh and interesting.
Right.
It sounds like a grind for sure.
Definitely.
I'm just going to go on record to say I've always found it boring to listen to actors talk about acting. So if I'm
no. Well, I mean, we don't really
craft. I apologize.
No. I mean, it's like me talking. I don't care about talking about fixing computers. It's like nobody likes to talk about how the sausage is made, right?
Right.
But you're really the first actor we've interviewed that's had some extensive like soap opera and daytime television. So just getting the angle of that firsthand is always interesting, because it's a world that I don't know much about. I'm not the target audience of Bold and the Beautiful. It may surprise everybody here. So jumping into Mike Barnes. what was the experience? And I mean, this is digging back to I guess pre-production would be 1988, 1987, maybe even. What was it like auditioning for the role of Mike? Were you a fan of the previous Karate Kid movies, or?
Yeah, that's a really good point. The first thing you got to realize is that I had been a paying customer to see the Karate Kid and the Karate Kid 2 in the theaters. So I got the role for an open call. They had an open call for Mike Barnes, which was supposed to be a 17-year-old white Mike Tyson who terrorized Daniel LaRusso. And I waited in line with like 1,500, 2,000 people. And John Avildsen, who had directed the Karate Kid 1 and 2, and he directed Rocky and won the Oscar for it, he stopped and we did a quick improv. He brought me inside the studio. There's Ralph Macchio. It was a little surreal, right? And I wound up doing a scene with Ralph, and thought I did really well. Had a real good feeling about it, and they promptly hired somebody else. And that guy worked for about a week, and I guess it didn't work out. And they let him go, and they called me back, and the rest is history for me. It was surreal. I keep going back to that word because, here I am now, I'm suddenly on the back lot of the third installment of a major studio franchise, working with Pat Morita, who I had grown up with, watching him as Arnold on Happy Days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, as Mr. Miyagi and Ralph Macchio, and, there's Martin Kove, who plays Sensei Kreese. And I was a young guy. I had just started studying acting. I had done like 1 or 2 professional jobs, nothing on the, on the scale of what I was doing there. And, I kind of had to wrangle myself and very quickly realize, look, I'm not a tourist here. I'm a part of the cast, and I need to, be professional and focus. And, the thing that was hard about it for me was, first of all, they had all worked together for the first 2 films, so they had a shorthand. The second thing is, as a young actor, I didn't understand lighting and camera and lenses and all the stuff that I kind of take for granted now, which I know intuitively. I'm hearing, there's a whole lexicon that is used on a film set, which if you don't know it sounds crazy. Like if somebody says, kill the baby, and it's referring to turning off the light, and it's all this crazy stuff. And so it was on a number of levels, it was a new experience. And so it was challenging and difficult. There was a lot of choreography to learn. It was imperative that, we had the choreography down pat, because we just, no one wanted to get hurt, least of all, risking Ralph getting hurt. So that was pretty crazy.
I mean, that's pretty insane that they were doing like a live reading essentially with the actual folks for open casting call. That's pretty ballsy. I mean, that's.
Well, I think in retrospect, I think they're really doing it as a publicity stunt. I mean, the chance of finding one of your lead actors from an open call is slim.
Yeah.
And yet they did. I
mean, it worked. It works when it does.
Right.
Works.
That's cool though.
Living proof.
That's a hell of a job interview, for sure.
Right.
Feet to the fire. And so you kind of touched on it. Mike is like the most vicious opponent Daniel's ever had to face. Like how was it? How did it feel like to bring that intensity to the set? Did it feel like natural? Did you have to put yourself in that situation to be a bully to Daniel? Or
it's funny. Growing up as a kid, I was bullied pretty severely. I had real issues with being bullied when I was a little kid, and then I eventually started taking martial arts, and it wasn't an issue anymore. But I guess I've always been very empathetic to people being bullied. I do a lot of work actually going into schools and talking to kids about bullying. I was able to tap into something that is obviously, somewhere in my personality. I guess I do kind of have a temper. But I like to think I've never been a bully to anybody. If I have, I apologize. But I just kind of tapped into stuff that I'd seen, I guess. People who bullied me, things other performances. The final fight scene at the All Valley tournament, really, that was all ad lib. They just let it go and said, scare him. And I really think that the producers of the film were concerned, because if that scene, the climactic final fight scene, doesn't work, the movie completely doesn't work, right? It falls apart.
Right.
And I don't know that they thought I'd be able to pull it off. I mean, I was a very, very green young actor, and I had just started studying acting when I got the role, and I worked with a private coach and everything, but there's no substitute for experience. I mean, now I'm a guy that's on 1,000 episodes of television and 20 films, and there's stuff I know now that I just simply didn't know then. But they let me kind of off the leash and just said, terrify him, and you can say whatever you want. And that's what came out.
Wow.
I mean, it was. I mean, you really gave it to him. I mean, that was.
Is everybody says to me, they go, "Wow, I would have been so terrified of Mike Barnes." And I'm like, I would have been terrified of Mike Barnes.
I mean, the whole recurring theme, and I know a lot of folks always kind of dog on part 3 as being like the weakest in the series, but it has such a different tone. It's so much darker. I feel like it works because it's just a totally different thematic, whole thematic change. Right. And I really appreciated how tight that theme is in that movie. And I think it's gained a cult following since, but
now listen, they're in my opinion, there are a lot of problems with the story in it, but it wasn't, there were a lot of things that happened during pre-production and production, one of which was, Martin Cove was originally supposed to be the main bad guy, and he wound up getting a TV series for Disney. So that minimized his time that they had him for the Karate Kid 3. So I think they scrambled, and then they kind of recalibrated and came up with the Terry Silver character. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, and I honestly don't know the answer, I mean, the relationship that Daniel had with Jessica, which was this weird platonic relationship, and then she disappears midway through the movie, and it's like, it's hard for the audience to really get invested in fighting for, I don't know how to say it, I mean, I think it would have helped audiences get more invested if Jessica was his romantic interest, and then suddenly you see Mike Barnes saying things like, you can dream about me, and all that kind of horrendous crap.
Right.
Not
that it's not horrible, period, but
I mean, it was a weird. I get that. It just felt it felt empty in that regard. You don't have that emotional attachment.
And unlike Elizabeth Shue, who was there at the, she was completely involved in Daniel being at the All Valley tournament in the Karate Kid, Jessica wasn't even at the final fight. And so, unless I'm misremembering, which I don't think I am.
I think you're right.
Yeah. So I think there were issues with it.
It's like, if she doesn't believe enough to go to the final fight, I mean, what's the point? Why are we rooting for him, right? Like if she's already given up on him.
I mean, I wouldn't say why are we rooting for him, at all, but I think it would have helped. Right?
Yeah.
I also, and a lot of people have had this criticism or observation that it almost seems as if, Karate Kid 3 should have been Karate Kid 2 and vice versa. Because, you got to remember, Daniel had gone to Okinawa and fought for his life. Okay?
Yeah.
And while Mike Barnes was a vicious tournament fighter, he probably didn't have that experience. So, you would think that Daniel wouldn't be so afraid after having fought for his life with Chosen. But, listen, it's easy to armchair.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I think, like I said, I like it. It's just, it does. It felt like almost like this was the Empire Strikes Back, movie. Like the bad guys are the comeuppance. They're going to put everybody in their place, right? Because the underdog won in the first movie. It felt like thematically it was a weird pendulum shift when it probably should have been the second movie. And then you have Karate Kid 2 is higher stakes, arguably. you're beating up the high school bully versus you're beating the crime syndicate. So and yeah, it's weird. It's a weird jump, but
yeah.
It's like I just like that dark theme because the other two, they have their moments, but it is very lighthearted. It's like there's moments in 3 you're like, damn, what is this? Is this Karate Kid? Like, they are laying into this kid. So, and you were talking about going through like choreography and trying to keep everybody else from getting hurt, but you had your own injury scare. I mean, you feel like talking about that? I don't want to bring up any bad or traumatic.
Encapsulated it. I've told the story many times, and I'm sure a lot of people who are going to tune in and see this are like, oh God, not that story again. But basically, I was doing a scene and a stunt that had nothing to do with karate. I was standing in a stationary position. I had to jump on my side and land on the floor. I did it over and over again. We broke for Christmas, and I was having some pretty significant soreness in my upper left thigh. And so I started taking aspirin and drove through the desert to Las Vegas. And, Christmas Day, 1989, was it 89 or 88? I was in the emergency room fighting for my life because I had been bleeding internally, and the pain on my leg was the blood dripping down my femoral artery, and the aspirin had exacerbated the bleeding because it's a blood thinner. Mm-hmm. And, they did emergency surgery. I thought they meant Monday. They meant in 15 minutes. And I got a call from the studio from John Appleson, and he's like, look, you got to be back on set in like 10 days or we're going to recast. They were going to hire Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son. And so I had myself discharged against medical advice, and I rehabilitated myself. I worked out with a guy from the LA Rams, and I had 15 inches of staples on my abdomen, and they had just come out, and they decided I had lost like 30 pounds. They decided they were going to let me. Initially they were going to get a stuntman, and they were going to use me in the close-ups, that's a horrendous. It's a horrendous alternative to have to deal with for camera and everything else. Mm-hmm. And besides the fact I'd studied karate for years. And
you could do the moves if you were healthy. Yeah.
So long story short, though, I wound up doing all my own martial arts in the film, all of it. Nice. And, for that reason, among others, but that's really the prime reason that this movie's so special for me, because they told me they didn't know if I was going to live. And, the fact that I literally had to go to war mentally with myself to be able to stay in the film, at a very young age, to have that feeling of immortality that we all have when we're that young, snatched away, and then have to look deep inside and kind of get a glimpse of, at least in that moment, what I'm made of, and fight my way back into it, was an unbelievable experience. And as terrifying and difficult as it was, I don't think I would change it, because it really it revealed something about myself that I didn't previously know. And to this day, when certain things get tough, and if I sort of hear that inner critic monologue starting to get yappy, I remind myself, I was like, look, you did this, you can handle this.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the strongest points of this movie is just the strength of Mike's role, which normally you would, say, well, Mike's not the main character. It's not about Mike, but I do think that your performance, and obviously you had a very strong personal drive because of everything that happened to you behind the scenes that people didn't really know about until, years after the fact.
Right.
I think that shows. You really put the energy in the role that a lot of people think of it. It's the third entry in a tentpole franchise. People can start phoning it in. People half-ass it. They don't put the energy into it anymore. It becomes a bit of like a, routine. And you brought some fresh blood to that franchise.
Very nice. Thank you.
That's cool. That's cool to have that background, because that's an excellent, you took that weakness and made it a power. and I think that's very martial arts. That's very
it is.
Yeah, I mean that's very on theme, on brand for that. So that's cool because that's the spirit of what those movies are supposed to entail, is finding strength from weakness in adversity.
Right. That is true.
So the future here, you've been on record with other outlets talking about Karate Kid and Cobra Kai, how you'd like to reprise your role as Mike in an upcoming season. Is there anything you're allowed to share?
Well,
without any involvement?
I would very much like to dust off the old black sleeveless gi. But no, there's nothing I can share. I mean, I don't mean to seem coy when people
no. Yeah,
but I mean, if I told you that I literally get asked from around the world, I get texts and are you going to be in season 4? Maybe 50 people a day, 70 people a day. And I always say, we shall see, because I say, and all I can say is that I know the producers who I've spoken with are fans of, everybody from the original films. They want to try and work them all organically. And I think they've got such a winning formula right now that I completely trust that, when they feel the time is right, I don't think we've seen the last of Mike Barnes.
I mean, I think that's been my opinion too, is they've worked everybody back in so far in a really good organic way. I mean, I feel like Mike's gonna have he's gonna have his Mandalorian season finale entrance at some point. I think it's inevitable that he's gonna show up at some point in some capacity.
And I also think that you as an actor, it'd be really nice for you to, since you mentioned it, that you were a brand new actor, for you to revisit a role that might have been somewhat raw, and for you to, over your years of experience, revisit that, tone it, retool it a little bit. That would be very interesting to see, I think.
Mike Barnes was a pretty one-dimensional character. I mean, I think, I tried to insert a little bit of different color into it. When you see me negotiating with Terry Silver, he kind of comes in as well-behaved guy, and then he becomes a lunatic. But like you said, as a guy now that's been doing this for 30 plus years, I would like to have the chance to reprise the role in a much more layered, in a much layered, multiple way.
And people would have said, people did say the same thing about Johnny, how he's one-dimensional. He was just the bully, and look what they were able to do with that character and the depth. And now it's like people are completely team Johnny over Daniel at this point now. So
now, once you flesh out a backstory, not everything's black and white. Mike. Yeah, I think there's always the different shades of gray there. And I think Mike could definitely.
That's so true. I mean, for me as an actor, I've always been interested in playing, the nanoshades of gray that live between the extremes of white and black, because I think that's where most people live their lives. And I think those are the interesting moments, when you see the hero exhibiting flaws and you see the quote unquote villain exhibiting.
It's more human than you thought. Yeah. That's real. It's just like the Guillermo del Toro, theory of every single movie. It's not the monster who's the monster. It's the people who are the monsters.
Right.
I mean, I'd like to see that. I have hopes because, like I said, I wasn't even really a huge Cobra Kai. Like I watched the original movies and the show came out. I was like, oh, that's cool. I'll get around to watching it. And when I finally caught up with it, I'm glad that it got picked up and extended. I'm like, damn, this was a pretty good. Who would have thought of all franchises to revive, they could have done such an excellent job? Like that's what a renaissance it's been able to have. Instead of just churning out tent poles and losing the audience.
Right. Right. I think one of the really interesting things that they've done is they have straddled the fence where they appeal to like the guys from sort of my generation who saw the original films in the late 80s and 90s, and they appeal to that sort of sense of nostalgia and to a certain extent a little bit of that anachronistic this, Johnny has that sort of anachronistic quality where he's a guy from the 80s that doesn't really get computers.
Yeah.
And it's funny, and that's good. But then you also have to be able to accommodate, the millennials and the generation even after that, who may not have even seen Karate Kid. A lot of kids are watching Cobra Kai and then going back and watching the original films. So you're dealing with two very different generations and trying to find a way to appeal to both of them. And I think that's one of the biggest successes of the show.
Hell, I mean, Patrick's own daughter is a huge fan.
The whole franchise.
Of the whole franchise. I mean, she's 7.
she's 9.
9. I'm sorry. So, I mean, but that, she started this whole thing, you got to start it pretty early.
When it was on YouTube, we started watching it. Yeah.
So, I mean, it definitely has that appeal. It's just like the right balance. I think that's what we're seeing in a lot of stuff. A lot of these reprisals, it's straight on that line. And honestly, I feel like it kind of started with the Mad Max Fury Road was kind of this good streak of renewals and revisits of old franchises that haven't alienated too much.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would also say to a certain extent, probably the fact that people are home in mass right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're watching more TV. They're binge watching shows. They're maybe you start going through and say, oh, we've seen this, we've seen this, we've seen that, and somebody who might not necessarily watch Cobra Kai right out of the box is discovering it, and it's just built this phenomenal audience fan base around the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's a captive audience during quarantine, so that helps too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll pull back from Cobra Kai, Karate Kid. A decade ago, you released a lifestyle and a cookbook.
I did, yeah.
The Modern Gentleman.
Yeah.
What was your motivation for that, and like, what's your go-to cuisine when you're in the kitchen?
I've always loved to cook, and when I was in college, I couldn't afford to take girls to fancy restaurants, so I figured if I could cook them something really good, I'd have a chance at maybe getting them to come over, and so I just
it's a good excuse. Come over, I'm making dinner. It's gonna be good.
Right. So I've always loved cooking. I see food as being a conduit to connecting people. Mm-hmm. There's a reason why there's that saying, break bread together, and I really believe that. So the book is kind of a hybrid. It's a cookbook with great recipes, but it's also a book to help guys be better guys and to help women understand guys. I think back in like my grandfather's time, guys like John Wayne and Ronald Reagan sort of intuitively knew what was expected of them as men. They were the greatest generation. They came back from the war. And over the years, the women's movement happened, and the women's movement was great in so many respects, but it wasn't without its collateral damage. And so I think that a lot of guys are like, am I supposed to be this alpha male, or am I supposed to be this really empathetic guy that's in tune with my emotions and a good listener? And of course, the truth is it's an amalgamation of both. Mm-hmm. And so the book really deals with how to be a gentleman but not be a doormat. Mm-hmm. And I have a lot of chapters in it, like The Modern Gentleman Defends Himself, and I talk about how learning a martial art has profoundly impacted my life. And I say at the end of it, look, if you do have to kick a guy in the face, I suggest you go to page blah, 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 and potato recipe, because it's very easy to chew. And then there's other, chapters like The Modern Gentleman Studies a Foreign Language. And studying foreign languages is something that has always fascinated me. I speak Italian. I'm actually, when I finish this with you, I have a Mandarin lesson. And I think it really opens your world up to meeting completely different people. And also when you travel to those places, you see it in a completely different way than being just kind of a wide-eyed tourist oblivious to what's going on. Yeah. I talk about dating, about interacting, and I think there's a lot of stuff in it that's really good head food for young guys, maybe for an older guy that's sort of fallen asleep at the wheel maybe. And it's also really great for women to get an understanding of, you know, kind of a front row seat in the psychic theater for men and understand a little bit about how we are and what tends to motivate most of us.
I think that's always been a cool combination to me, are those lifestyle / cookbooks where they kind of mix. It's like a little life Bible. You just kind of keep it in your bar or whatever and flip through it. I've got a couple of the old the Brooks Brothers, like how to dress like a gentleman, you know, like how to do all the knots for your ties and stuff. And I go back to that at least once or twice a year to look up something.
Yeah.
Like, am I supposed to leave this button buttoned, or is the top one unbuttoned if it's a sport jacket, or if it's actually a suit coat? You know, black tie versus white tie affairs, all that, you know. I
think that, you know, right now in society, we have a serious problem with civility. Mm-hmm. And I think that I talk a lot about that in the book. That
and I mean, that's ahead of the curve. That's 10 years ago. I mean, look at how things have evolved since.
No, it's gotten worse. It's de-evolved. And, you know, I think it's really important to be cognizant of how we treat other people. And, you know, I'm a big fan of being a gentleman. I think it's, you know, being civil and treating other people with dignity and respect, but not being, you know, like I said, not being a doormat. Yeah. It is really important.
You can be assertive without being aggressive. I've always thought that's like a virtue.
Yeah, you know, I'm a big fan of what Patrick Swayze said in Roadhouse. Be nice until it's time not to be nice.
Yep. Right.
You know, the immovable object.
An unstoppable force, right?
Yes. Yeah. That's my middle namesake is after Patrick Swayze. I'm very much a late 80s, early 90s baby.
I had the honor of going to Italy with him for an awards show, and it was such an honor for me to meet him and hang out with him. And
he seemed like a cool dude.
He was a cool
dude. Definitely
man.
Gone too soon, for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, so I guess we'll cap it off with your newest project, which you kind of touched on at the beginning of the night here. So your book that's available for pre-order is called The Way of the Cobra, and what's it about?
So The Way of the Cobra is framed with the metaphor of a dojo of life, learning Cobra life. And I'm the sensei, and I'm going to teach you how to unleash your inner badass. These are a lot of the strategies, the battle-tested strategies that I have used to write an Amazon new release bestseller, to create an Emmy Award-winning show on Amazon, and to lose 35 pounds, all of which was in... Did I freeze? I froze up.
Well, that actually worked because you had your... I did that on purpose. That was pretty good.
All of which I did in 1 year. And, you know, it's like I don't say that to impress you, but I say it to impress upon you what is possible. And so I talk about a lot of the ways that I've been able to change my life to achieve some of the success that I have. And I'm a firm believer that, you know, it's one of those things that you got to give it away to keep it. And for me, it helps me be my best person, my most authentic life, to help inspiring other people. I use a lot of stories from my real life. In fact, I taught, there's a chapter extensively talking about the audition process for the Karate Kid, which dovetails into one of the lessons. And, you know, I know with every fiber of my being that this book has the ability to help people transform their lives. And I'm a big proponent of transform your life and you can transform the world.
I mean, you can't, you know, it's just like when you're in a airplane, they tell you put your own oxygen mask on before you try to help somebody else put theirs on, right?
Absolutely. And so Cobra, being a Cobra is somebody that is living their most authentic life, has unleashed their inner badass. And it's actually an acronym for character optimization, balance, respect, and abundance. And I break down each of those areas. I talk a lot of strategies that I've used. I talk a lot about success, and you know that's something that people think is a really easy thing to define, but I talk about defining your success.
Yeah, it's different for everybody. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, not about the success that is based on some obnoxious celebrities' Instagram feed, and not on, the Madison Avenue commercials we see on TV telling us what success is supposed to be. But what does success mean to you? And I think that we all have an individual barometer inside of ourselves, and we know what it means to be successful. And if money and material possessions were the only metric for being successful, a staggering amount of the population would be considered unsuccessful, right? Mm-hmm. And so I relate a story in the book, and I say, a guy that's a janitor for 30, 40 years wouldn't be the first person that you would associate with being really successful. Not that there isn't honor in doing it, all of that stuff, but what if that same guy saved every dime that he made, put his only daughter through college, and she became a brilliant research scientist that went on to save lives? I'd say that guy's pretty successful.
Right.
And so finding your success, and you have to define what your success is, because that's the destination. If you don't know where you're going, it doesn't matter if you're driving there in a Ferrari. Right. And I talk a lot about, there's a whole goal setting workshop, and I talk about defining, your why. What is that thing that gets you out of bed? What is that thing when you've had your ass kicked and you're on the ground that's going to get you to get back on your feet and get back in the fight? And if you have a strong why, that's going to drive you and it's going to propel you. So a lot of the book is helping people get really clear with what it is that they want to do, then coming up with a battle plan of how to do it. And then I talk a lot about, internal obstacles and external obstacles. Internal obstacles are things like, making peace with your inner child, dealing with your inner critic, dealing with fear. Mm-hmm. And then, external obstacles are things like, people that are emotional vampires and thieves of time. There's a whole really cool section about identifying malignant narcissists, sociopaths, and psychopaths. How to identify these people, and what are some strategies to deal with them or extricate yourself from situations with them. Whether it's, whether you find yourself in a relationship with a narcissistic.
Well, the old Southern saying is just bless your heart. And then you just.
Bless your heart.
Bless your heart.
On the East Coast, we say F you. You say bless your heart.
If you hear bless your heart, you're in trouble.
You're in trouble.
That's not a good thing to hear from a true Southerner.
Right. So listen, like I said, I really hope people will check this book out. It's been selling like crazy. It came out about 2 days ago.
Okay, so it's not a pre-order. Is it? Oh, so it's still pre-order. When is the release date? Do you know? Is it finalized or?
About 6 weeks. About 6 weeks to be out there, and I'm really proud of my other two books, without a doubt. Success Factor X was named one of the 20 most inspirational books of the last 2 decades by Book Authority. It was an Amazon new release bestseller. But this book, I have really put my heart and soul in. And,
well, it sounds like a spiritual success for your first 2 works. Like you've got more experience, you're refining that process, you're bringing more of that life experience in and distilling it.
Valid. I think I got into acting initially because I felt I wanted to express myself. And as time went on, I realized that really I became an actor because I wanted to inspire people. And then as more time went on, I realized that acting isn't the only vessel that I can, use as a way of inspiring people. So I got into writing, and this book is 100% meant to inspire people to be their very best selves.
Yeah, I mean, it's a awesome. Renaissance man right there. I mean, you've lived it, you trained in it, you're teaching it, and you're sharing the knowledge. I think that's as you said, teaching is the most noble art. Like, it's the most generous thing you could do is share your experience, and that's the most valuable thing any of us has. Right. Is the impression we can leave on other people.
Absolutely.
Like, that's like the recurring thing in Blade Runner. That's why I've always loved like that movie so much. Is like, it's all memories. That's it. Like, what you do is gone when you're gone. If you don't have good memories that people have of you, then you didn't.
Like tears
in the rain. I mean, that's awesome. Like, that is so cool. That, I mean, like, I only had like 3 or 4 martial arts. I guess we had a karate class. It was like an after school program Patrick and I were in. We had a sensei come in and did some stuff with us, like, but we didn't sign up for classes. I was in Boy Scouts. I didn't have time to do karate. I wanted to, but I just couldn't fit it in my schedule.
Yeah.
And scouting taught me a lot of, I mean, it's a lot of the same kind of stuff. It's just not necessarily physical self-defense, but the building character, being kind to others, being useful, helpful, a productive member of society without being an asshole.
So Shelby, you hit the nail on the head, and I'll tell you, there's a lot of terrific information in my book, okay? But there are certain things that are universal truths. Mm-hmm. And they, you know, sometimes you hear it from one person and it doesn't resonate. So my hope is that much of what I'm going to say, you may already know. Like in the introduction of my book, I say I got good news and I got bad news. Here's the bad news comes first. I said, I don't have the answer. I don't have a silver bullet that's going to magically make you this incredibly successful, you know, evolved, fired up beast. I said, but here's the good news. You already have that inside of you. It's like the Zen riddle. How did the ship get in the bottle? It was always there. And you know, this is about me taking stuff that are universal truths and stuff that's worked for me that intuitively we all know, but it's just kind of gotten a little bit obscured. Mm-hmm. And I talk about how everybody's got an inner badass. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe it's been neglected, maybe it's been yet undiscovered, but we all have it. And this book is what's going to help people get in touch with it. And again, it's gonna, you know, I'm convinced that if you follow what I talk about in this book, 2021 can be your best year ever.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it sounds like an awesome book. I'll have to check it out. I'm a big fan of I love to see other people's perspectives on like this subject. And you're deep and steeped, like martial arts, like culture. It's steeped in you. I would love to see your take on it, because I don't think I've really read anything. I'm not really even super aware of because this is not really a realm that I'm super well versed in. So I'll definitely be checking it out.
WayoftheCobra.com. Go order your copy.
Check it out. We'll check it out. So Sean, it was a pleasure talking to you tonight. I really appreciate you coming on with us and talking about your career, and excited to read The Way of the Cobra.
Listen, I want to wish you guys all the best. Stay healthy, stay safe. You know, don't just survive, thrive.
Yeah. I think we all seem like the type we've been doing. I've really made a lot of hay this past year. It's been a hard year for everybody, but you know, it's really been an awesome year in other ways.
Right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've made so much money this year doing stuff that I wouldn't have had time to do. I mean, it's like I've been able to free up things to work on projects I wanted to work on. So it's been nice.
Cool.
We're making hay when it rains.
Much continued success.
Well, like I said, and I'm sure we'll be in touch again at some point.
So I hope so. Right?
Don't be a stranger.
Right. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks, Sean.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Stop recording.